All right, everyone, welcome back. Here we are once again, another rendition of Comedy Sports Chicago's DNI Talks with your host, me, Luis Cortez, a longtime comedy sports player in Los Angeles and now here in Chicago, and now currently our director of diversity and inclusion. Now, we started this show a few months back now at this point to normalize a lot of these diversity and inclusion conversations that are still kind of in the back, in the green room, just kind of sitting there very private. We don't really make these very public, and also so that everyone can get to know our ensembles and people that are going in and out of our theater, so that we can all familiarize ourselves with the topics at hand. Today, I am very excited because we're going to step away from the performers for a second and take a step into the office of comedy sports. Because today I am here with a very special guest. Today I'm here with the executive director of Comedy Sports Chicago. Please welcome Renee Ross.
Hi, Luis.
Hi, Renee. How are you?
I'm good.
How are you feeling today?
I'm great, thank you.
Great. I'm so glad you're here. So I was telling you earlier, one of the reasons that I was so excited about you being here is because and this is not just for, people who watch the shows and maybe peruse the website who might have just seen your name in writing, but even a lot of the ensemble members have not gotten a chance to just kind of sit down and chat with you. So as I was telling you, I made a pot of tea. And we're just gonna chat. We're just gonna talk. So I'm gonna start you off with the question that I start everybody off with. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, if you're not from Chicago, a little bit of your backstory, and what eventually led you to comedy sports or improv in general?
Yeah, that's a very, very big question.
It's a loaded question. My first
um,
question usually takes up half the interview.
yeah, understandably. So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I grew up there. I also went to college there. So I went to college at Point Park University and I studied acting. I had zero intention of being an actor though I like to pull that out when somebody claims that I can't perform. Like, I do have a degree in acting. But I fully intended on being a director. And so I spent most of my undergrad and post-college directing theater. So I did, I was very Tennessee Williams and Shakespeare and the intense stuff. Anything that's like
Marvin's Room sort of stuff.
Yeah, like good psychological or family drama, like anything that's raw. I was very into that. And so shortly after college, I worked for a theater company for a while. I worked for a lot of theater companies in Pittsburgh, all through high school and college. And I started a theater company a couple of years out of college in Pittsburgh, and I wanted to do theater differently from the industry. So one of the things that I loved about directing was being able to set the tone for my rehearsal room. So I was trained in a very kind of East Coast style, right? Where it was like, you get to the audition, you get the job. It doesn't matter how you do that, and kind of like a little bit more assertive than the Midwestern environment. And I think most theater majors all have kind of war stories about like the weird expectations that are spoken and unspoken, and in terms of appearance or presentation or things like that are normal and normalized in the entertainment industry. And so I saw a lot of my friends, myself included, suffering with a lot of that, and I did not find that to be necessary. And so I really wanted to direct so that I could create a tone for the show that was different, that was gracious and compassionate and understanding. And I found that when I wasn't a super aggressive type of director, I could get the best work out of my people. And so I started this company, and we did, like some really intense shows, because that's what I love.
You like?
And I learned pretty quickly what I didn't know. So like I'm pretty acutely aware of like know what you don't know kind of thing. And I decided after that experience to go to grad school. And that brought me to Chicago. So I went to grad school at Columbia College, Chicago, to study arts management and business. Because if you want to own a theater company, if you want to run a theater company, it's like cool to know the art, but you also have to know how to manage the business. You kind of can't have one without the other. They feed off of each other and they intertwine much more than we'd like to believe that they do. They're constantly in tension, but they constantly need each other, right? And so I learned that when I was trying to like run the company and direct the show and do like switch my brain back and forth between left and right all the time. It's like this right brain creative stuff that I was doing. And then the left brain, like, how do I fundraise $10,000 or whatever, like there was a bunch of different, I was trying to do too many things at one time. So I came to Chicago and I came to Columbia to study management and business. And the truth of the matter is when I graduated, I needed a job. And I had applied to every theater company in Chicago, and it was not a great hiring season. And a lot of my classmates were not also getting hired because there just wasn't a lot of work available at the time. And like midsummer kind of came around, and I remember my dad calling and being like, "You got to get it together and get a job." And I was like, "Okay, I'll just apply anywhere. Like I'll apply to anything, whether it's my ideal job or not, or my ideal company or not." And I applied at Comedy Sports, honestly, not knowing anything about it. Like, I'm sure you can imagine coming from theater.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Improv wasn't really like on my radar. As a matter of fact, it was so far off my radar. I was like kind of mortified. I had worked mostly in equity companies that are high budget. I mean, in high school, I started working in the Pittsburgh Public and Pittsburgh City theaters, and which are like the Pittsburgh equivalent of the Goodman and the Steppenwolf, right? So like that was where I started. so I came into this
mighty fall from grace.
Yeah, this improv company in the Midwest, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I need a job. And I remember the first time I met Dave Gaudette, I had just gotten hired, and he's like, "So what have you done?" And I said, "Well, prior to this, I did a show about dating violence and abuse, and another one about the war in Iraq, and another one about the epidemic of loneliness." And I just kind of rattled off all these like really heavy shows that I had done. And he's like, so comedies. And I was like, mm-hmm. But I over the years, I mean, it didn't take very long to understand a couple of things about Comedy Sports. One, it attracts a certain kind of person. It is not, I'm used to theater that you come in for 4 months, you do a show and you leave. And you might become lifelong friends, or you feel like you're becoming lifelong friends, but you leave in 4 months, right? And so it's this constant rotation of new people, new ensemble, new community, new thing, and then you move on and you do another one.
In the energy of everything.
And there was a thing about Comedy Sports where people stuck around, and I didn't quite understand that right away, but I really appreciated it. Like there was that family sense of, not family like we all love each other all the time, but family like good and bad, we're here in it together, both on the staff and in the ensemble, and I was working with the house staff at the time, and they had been there for years. And I remember one in particular asked me, like, "Are you here to make a career move, or are you going to stay for a while?" Like just point blank. I was like, can't answer that. But it was different. The people were different. And so that was one of the first things I noticed. The second thing that I noticed was the show was different. For somebody that doesn't usually understand a lot of improv and a lot of comedians, I have gone to see other people's like improv shows, and it's, you know, it's cool. Um, but it's not like what I would do on a Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And our show was so accessible and so genuinely funny to the layman, like funny to people that aren't comedians and don't know the inside jokes and don't know, you know, what like improv technique is being used or something, you know. I mean, it was accessible, and I really, really liked that. And so I kind of fell for the show in a lot of ways. And I would say the third thing that really kind of caught me in comedy sports is that I really appreciate our audiences. I have worked in many companies, and I used to say that you can walk down the street in Chicago and know who's a Goodman audience member and who's a Steppenwolf audience member, because it's a certain demographic.
Yeah.
Right. And when you walk into the theater, you're like, I know exactly who you are. I've worked in this for a long time. I know who you are. And there's a comfort in that, but I really loved that our audiences were so dynamic. I mean, you would walk in on any given night and see, I mean, just 5 different groups of people that would never naturally have been in the same room, unified in something that is goofy. No politics, no, you know, no divisiveness. Nobody is being called out or made fun of or made uncomfortable. It was very unifying, and I really respected that. Which is why I think also it attracts the kind of people that it attracts, because you have to also want to be committed to that. So that's kind of what led me to the company. And, you know, I mean, I've been there for about 6 years. So I've shifted in positions in the process.
That was literally what I was about to ask you. What was the position that you came in with?
I think I was hired with the title of hospitality manager.
Okay.
Which was basically a front of house manager. I don't know why that wasn't the title I had, but
You've been around for 6 years now, so you know, obviously you made us aware that like you're very into like theater, the word. So what has kept you around for 6 years? What has kept you from just jumping back into that?
Because it's the same concept, right? So the thing that I was super passionate about there was telling people stories, right? That's why I like to do things that were based in reality, that were heavy but true, right? And so even when you look at Tennessee Williams, a lot of it's autobiographical, and you know, and so I like to tell people stories. And in comedy, sports in particular, you still get a lot of that. It comes out in a very different way. It's a different medium, but you still see people's passions and personalities and struggles. It comes out, whether we realize it or not. You know, it's still a means of communication with your audience. And the thing that drove me into directing in the first place, and I had someone point this out many, many years ago when I was like at a crisis of like, what am I going to do with my career? You know? And they said, the thing that you were so passionate about as a director of creating an environment and creating a culture is exactly what you're doing. It's just in a different place. And so I think when I realized that, it became more of a passion, that like, I want to be part of making this culture something positive and something that's edifying and encouraging and empowering to people. I want to be part of bringing people in and building them up and helping them to become good leaders and good forward thinkers and courageous in making choices that may not be what is industry standard or, you know, what everyone else is doing. Like I want to be part of that. And that's what I was passionate about before. It was just coming out in a different medium. And so I think when I realized that And it's one of the things I often say to like new grads or upcoming graduates, right? What you have in your head of what you think you want to do is just the beginning. So don't pigeonhole yourself in that, because you never know where that's going to lead. And you might end up doing exactly what you want to do, but it just looks different. So I think that that's a big piece of what has kind of kept me. But now, you know, you're locked in, you got friends, and you got, and you're committed. So it's just different, you know, it's a different feeling and a different kind of commitment than just a job.
Do you at some point hope, well, I don't want to say you'll never go back there, but are you hoping to direct something again at some point? Or is that done?
I think that part of my life is past. It definitely like, there are definitely moments that I kind of bring that part of my brain in, and it excites me and everything. But I think that I haven't done it in a long time. So if I were to go back, I'd be kind of starting career wise, I'd be starting over. Yeah. I'd be rusty. It would be, you know, so I think that would be very difficult to go back to at this point. I mean, it's been, you figure 6, 7, 8, almost a decade since I was directing, right? So like, I think that would be really difficult. But and I also think that, you know, life is changing and priorities are changing and family is changing, and so like it's a difficult time-wise commitment to me. So probably not.
So in that sense, since that was, I don't want to say it was the goal, but it was the main focus at the time. Um, Having moved away from it, do you feel like a sense of peace having moved away from it, or is that something that you're kind of like, ah?
You know, by and large, I've made peace with it, right? Like, um, I made choices and I went down a different path in my life, and you know, I've generally made peace with that. I definitely have my moments. You know, I get frustrated because I still have that very right brain, and there's only so many hours a day I can look at Excel,
Yeah,
or QuickBooks. And you don't, you know, as Jason has said to me before, I don't get the sort of artistic payoff that, you know, most of the other people in the company do, where you can kind of do your grind all day and then get your artistic payoff later. I don't really get that. And so I definitely, it's definitely always a part of me, and it's definitely always something that I kind of mourn. But by and large, I've made peace in that you know, we're just doing, you know, things that differently than I expected, but it's not bad. Yeah.
no, and I totally get that. I dealt with similar feelings after I moved away from LA, having tried the Hollywood actor thing. And I had those moments of like, did I, you know, am I walking away with my tail between my legs? But now, a few years away, it was very much that, realizing that like I'm still doing what I wanted to do, but just in a different capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Plus it was just that idea of, I realized I wanted more stage time than like TV, film, and that wasn't like, there's no theater in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So it was time to go. So, but yeah, I had to make peace with those feelings as well. So I totally get where you're coming with that.
It's interesting you say that, because we, you know, a lot of my classmates that I was in undergrad with, you know, I was in a conservatory. So there was a small group of us, you know, and we've all talked a lot about when we were finishing school and we were in the program and everything, there was this mentality that if you're not on Broadway, you're not doing it. You know, I mean, I remember the very first day of college, the department chair said, look to your right, look to your left, one of you will graduate. And then towards the end of it, it was
got that. Someone genuinely said that in all
100%. And I remember who was sitting on either side of me. And one of us graduated. It was me.
Neither one of them graduated.
No. And I remember, you know, later on, it was like, one of you will have a career. after people had dropped off, now it's one of you will have a career. And, and a lot of us have dealt with sort of the shame of that not looking the way that we were kind of taught it's supposed to look, that you're not equity, or you're not SAG, or you're not, in traveling the rep shows, or, like on tour somewhere, like you're not in these big things. You've wasted all of your training and all of that money and all of that time, and you've sold out, and so I think it's been enough years that that we've started to make peace with that and just say, like, you know what, a career is long. It's a longevity. There's a job and there's a career. You can get a job on Broadway and that's beautiful. That doesn't mean you're going to have a job in 5 years, right? And so you have to look at the ebbs and flows of the career, and we're still creating, and we're still offering things, into the industry, and building the industry up, and creating culture, which is what we want to do. But it just looks different from what we were kind of trained into. And so I think there is a process that a lot of actors and performers and creators go through, where you really do have to kind of reconcile what that, I don't want to say what the dream looks like, but what you expect and what your reality is, and whether or not those things are okay.
I think a lot of it is also with, like, I don't know, maybe because I've been doing it for so long, but like acknowledging the new possibilities. Because back in the day, but like, I'm so old, but it was limited to movies and television. God, that was hard. But then we got into streaming services and online shows and all this other stuff, and when was the last time you actually were like, oh, it's 8:00, time for my show? Like, we don't do that anymore. So everything looks so different now, and what success can look like has expanded so much. It's no longer just your star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Like, it's so different now, but in that everything is shifting around. So on top of that, it's creating a bunch of new possibilities in different areas that a lot of us didn't expect to go into, which is why I find myself in diversity and inclusion.
See? Yeah.
So, speaking of things changing, over the last couple of years, we were already doing some drastic changes, having, had that huge changeover in the office a few years ago. But then, of course, everything closed with COVID, and we kind of just had to shift or pivot pretty hard. So now, we find ourselves in this digital first life for a bit, and hopefully moving forward. How are you specifically feeling about, the changes and pivots we had to make, and kind of where we're headed right now?
I'm going to say something that is an uncommon statement in this season. I think in a lot of ways, this was the best thing that could have happened to us. For us. I'm not saying it was not, it is not still incredibly hard and exhausting and, like endlessly new and changing. And, there's so much that we're all having to learn and do. And, in every department and direction that you look, we're all having to learn completely new jobs, basically. Right. But I think that the world was evolving, and there's something that happens where even if you want to evolve with the world, to your point, you have all these streaming services and web shows and, things that are happening way before COVID. Um, but just given like the institution we were operating with a small team, we were already tapped out. Like we were already running at max with a small group of people. So to try and be like, yeah, let's do digital content, like we couldn't keep up with it, and we just couldn't do it because we just didn't have the capacity. And so it gave us a chance to put one thing on hold and focus on this new thing, so that now when we reopen, we've got this thing established and we can add our live shows and be able to grow more steadily. But I think that it's what we needed to do already. Like we needed to be virtual, we needed to be digital, we needed to have content available to people in a different medium, just to be relevant with what is going on in the world and how people consume entertainment. And I've always said your biggest competitor is not the comedy theater next door, it's Netflix. For the last couple of years, like the biggest competitor, the thing that will keep someone from coming to your show oftentimes is, do I want to get dressed and go out, or do I want to put on sweatpants and watch Netflix? That a lot of times is the very the first piece of the decision, right? Then it's all the other stuff. But the first piece is like, do I want to go out? And so it gave us the opportunity to reach people in a completely different medium and a completely different arena that we wanted to do. We just didn't have the capacity to do it. So, I think it's great. And I am super excited about it. And I'm super happy with it. I think it's something that we're going to be able to offer moving forward. It's not saying that we don't all want to be live again, because I think everyone knows, like every performer wants to, particularly stage performers, they want to be live again. And you want to be able to walk into the room of the audience and like watch everyone's reactions. That's one of the things that I loved as a director, was sitting in the back of the theater during opening night and watching the audience. Like I've seen the show 100 times. Yeah. Now I want to watch the people, and it's and so I think we all crave that, and I think we all are excited about that. But I think everyone is excited about what we've created in the process of the last year. So yes, it's been hard and it's been tiring, but I think it's been good.
What do you what have been to you some of the more, I guess, surprising changes, things that you didn't see coming? I mean, obviously, no one saw a pandemic coming and the huge shutdown, but I guess from all that, what have been some of the changes that have happened that I guess have kind of come out of left field you weren't expecting?
In the last year?
Sure.
I think I wasn't expecting our audience to be as encouraging and supportive and excited as we were.
This is the online crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's, a lot of times when you watch something virtually, it's a passive experience. And I think that it was really surprising to me and exciting that people were so willing to be engaged and to participate and to get to know each other and to create community and be so supportive also of the creators and the comedians. And, like there's so much back and forth encouragement that's like kind of wild. Like even if you do a live show, your audience kind of comes in and goes for the most part. You don't really have that like ongoing, like, you're doing a great job. I mean, it's really, it's a very, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, both sides are giving something to the other side.
Symbiotic.
Yes, thank you. They're both giving something to the other side and building up in the process. So we're working really hard to be able to bring joy and laughter and comedy and community. And they're working really hard to build that community and to encourage our artists. And like, it's this beautiful melting pot that I don't think any of us, we've always loved our fans and we've always spoken very highly of them. Like that's one of sort of the things that I've learned about this company over the years, is that there's a very high esteem for our audiences and our fans. And so I wasn't expecting them to like not participate at all necessarily, but this has blown me out of the water. And
we're expecting them to do all the things they've done.
It's humbling, right? I mean, I think it's humbling for us to see such encouragement from our fans.
It was,
I think that's it.
It was surprising seeing it even back in the Zoom days.
Yeah.
When the chat option was, it's very minimal because Zoom is built for business. It's not built for a show like that. You look at all the options they have now on Twitch. That is not as surprising that there's so much engagement. But back in the Zoom days, when it was literally just like a raised hand option and then chat, right, they would go crazy in there. It's why we came up with things like 6s and 7s in the chat and stuff like that, so that we could engage with people.
Yeah, but people jumped on it, and I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is like right at the beginning, right off the bat, there was this commitment to each other that was really, really awesome in an environment that doesn't make sense for that, quite frankly, right? And so
I think that might have been part of it, is that we all went into it on that same level of like, we don't know what we're doing. You don't know what you're watching. So we're going to figure this out together.
Yeah.
Build something fun for all of us.
But isn't that like, that's the beauty. And so that's the stuff that brings you back to that creative side, that you get to watch that relationship develop. And that's sort of the beauty of art, right? I mean, not that we necessarily talk about being high art all the time, but like
we're not Guernica, but we're nothing to scoff at.
Sure, but that's sort of that's why we all do this, right? Is like that you're building that relationship with an audience that is so unique to that experience, and it can't really be replicated outside of that experience. And so it is kind of magical to watch. So yeah.
What are you hoping for us? Let's say in the next 5 years. I mean,
boy,
it's a heavy question, but
after the last year, I've learned not to plan too far ahead. So,
no, and I think that's great. I love that. I think there's that idea of like, what's your 5-year plan? And I think right now everyone's like, I'm just trying to make it to next month.
And you know what? When I was interviewing for jobs back in the day and people would ask me that, I would say, I am a little bit wiser than to have an answer to that question. I have learned not to have a 5-year plan. I think, the next big thing on my radar is our next venue. I think that's a big project, and it's a big thing. I don't know, what that timeline looks like in terms of when that project is complete, right? Because it's kind of like moving into a new home. Like, you can move in. That doesn't mean that like you're fully completed and settled, right? You still need to build some shelves, and so I think that's a big thing that's on my radar. And I mean, I think I want to see us continue to evolve and continue to grow. We have so many talented people in our ensemble, and it kind of like, man, we had an internal event, was it last week, I think?
Yeah.
And I learned that a lot of people in our ensemble are very good at video editing. I had no idea. I was blown away. Like people that I had no idea knew how to do that. And that's like the tip of the iceberg. Like we have so much talent in our ensemble, whether it's acting or writing or music or video or like just I mean overflowing with talent.
I mean, I think and a lot of that just speaks to how well a lot of us are at like pivoting in that sort of way because of everything that's happened in the last year. I mean,
Sure.
just I myself with like things like this have figured out more about editing than I ever knew before. And mind you, it's nothing too complicated,
Right.
but like seeing things like that, and I know like things like karaoke, the karaoke show, which is
Yeah.
getting more and more intense as people plan their shows. A lot
Yeah.
of those people are very much in that same like I know so much about editing now than I ever did. It's like, well,
Sure.
either you learn it or you're stuck.
Yeah. I mean, there is an element of that, right? The survival aspect of it. Like you got you got to just do what you can do right now. But it does kind of speak to just the level of talent that's in. I mean, you also have to have that creative brain to be able to envision the thing that you want, right? I mean, that's sort of where it starts.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that excites me is that I've seen a lot of people kind of bloom over the last year for that reason, just out of necessity. Like they have to try other things and or put other talents in the spotlight or whatever. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity in that. I don't know what that's going to look like just yet, but I do know that there's more to unpack. So I think that in terms of the direction of the company, I think we're looking at a new venue, and we're looking at just finding ways to unpack all of this talent that we have in our ensemble. So it's probably what is coming down the pike.
That's great. No, and I think that's a good place to start wrapping it up. Believe it or not, we're almost out of time here. So, Renee, any final thoughts or nuggets of wisdom?
No. we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we've covered so much. No, this is great. No, this is fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back. We'll chat a little deeper on a lot of this stuff because, as you said, we're very much shifting all over the place, not just on stage or with the shows, but also with the way that we run everything and are reshifting a few things to serve us a little better. So I would love to continue hearing about that. So thank you so much for being here, and everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. Please continue watching Comedy Sports. Find us on Facebook, on Instagram. Find us on ZSZN on Twitch. You can also find our entire schedule there. We have programming 6 days a week, except for Tuesdays. That's when we rehearse. So please check us out there. And we will see you next time here at Comedy Sports DNI Talks.